Hello everyone and welcome to our Data Connectivity Solutions 18 minutes to access your data and drive meaningful analytics. My name is Zach Rajiak. I'll be your co-host today. And before we start our webinar, I'd simply like to cover off a couple of housekeeping tips.
If you have any questions for us, please use the Q&A box that is in the upper right-hand corner of your WebEx app. And also, we'll be taking questions towards the end of the presentation as well. So we invite you to please put your questions there and we'll respond accordingly. Well, without further ado, I'd like to introduce my colleague, Jeff Baton. Jeff is the Sales Engineering Manager here at Simba Magnitude. And I'll pass this to Jeff to start his presentation.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining. We wanted to tell you today about how you can easily get meaningful insights from your data. We talk to people all the time about data access and data analysis, and one of the chief complaints we hear is that they spend 80% of their time trying to get access to the right data and only 20% of the time actually doing meaningful analysis. We think that our drivers are an excellent way to help that problem. Another thing that we find is that people are trying to access a whole bunch of different data sources. So it's not just going to Oracle or Postgres. There are a number of things like Salesforce, like Concur, like Marketo, where people want to pull data from to be able to make meaningful decisions. And so as I said, we can help you connect to your data wherever it is. What I mean by that is that we can put standards-based SQL on top of any data source, and then you can connect to those data sources in Tableau or Excel or Power BI or Concur to do whatever type of analysis you want. That goes for things like Informatica and other ETL tools as well. And we connect to a whole different variety of data sources, so traditional ones like Oracle, like SQL Server, Hadoop analytics engines like Hive or Spark, NoSQL sources like MongoDB or Cassandra, and SaaS applications like Concur or Marketo or Salesforce. If you have an internal data source, we also have an SDK, so you could use that to quickly and easily create your own connector. I'll tell you a little bit about the data model that we're using today. We're taking a sales operations scenario, and we're using Concur to track expenses for customer visits, Salesforce to track opportunities and revenue, and Postgres has timesheet type data. We've added some additional expense types in Concur to customize the data source to our scenario. We've joined all these data sources together using the Salesforce IDs. So in Concur, on the reports and the data entries, we've used the Salesforce Opportunity ID. And in Postgres, for the timesheets, we have things linked both by Opportunity ID and Account ID. So the first part to getting access to any data source with one of our ODBC drivers is through the ODBC administrator. Actually, the first thing to do is go to the simba.com website and download a free 30-day evaluation. Once you have the driver installed, you can go to the ODBC administrator. You'll fill in a couple basic things to tell it how to connect to the data source and test to make sure you've got a successful connection. After that, you can open up Tableau or the BI tool of your choice. For Tableau, go to Other Databases, ODBC, and you'll see all the different DSNs you have. So we have the Concur DSN set up. We also have a Salesforce DSN and a Postgres DSN that we'll be using today. And once you've connected there, you'll be able to browse through the different tables you have in your data source. And as you'll see in a second here, we have a whole bunch of different information that's available through Concur, including the entries. You can look at reports. And what we'll be looking at further, you can connect to different data sources. So now we could bring in the Salesforce data also. Now this Tableau gives us the ability to join tables across data sources, which is really useful. So then we use the Simba driver to connect to the data sources, but Tableau is able to actually join those tables together. Other tools like Power BI and Qlik do have the same type of capability, so you could do this in any of those BI tools. So the first thing I want to look at is Concur by itself. Tableau doesn't have a native Concur connector at this point, so the Simba driver is a great way to get access. The data set that we're going to be looking at is based on Game of Thrones. We're looking at Varys Enterprises. Varys likes to say that he's benevolent and he does what's best for the realm, but maybe he actually is taking a little in on the side for all the spying work that he's doing. So you can see here I've got the reports and the entries table from Concur. And this lets us make charts. For example, we could look at the expenses by each report. So in January, there was a Spy on Starks report that was used. Here there's one for the Iron Bank in March. And so just your regular expense report type data. If we wanted to look at the total that we had spent on each expense type, we could see that ship passage is the largest expense that we had last year. Bribing, pretty big expense. Bodyguards, pretty big expense. Not too much spent on lunch. We can also see the count of each expense type. So there were 11 bribes that were done last year and 11 hotel stays. It gets more interesting if we look at Tableau and, if we look at Concur and Salesforce together. So again, we have reports and entries from Concur, and we're joining that to the opportunities using the opportunity ID in Salesforce and the account data. So now we can look at expenses, but we can also look at revenue. So this chart shows both the won on the left side opportunities and the lost on the right side. So here's the revenue that we gained from winning those opportunities and our total expenses through Concur. Also here, we didn't get any revenue for the lost opportunities, but we did have about 46,000 in expenses. You could also look at the expenses per Salesforce account. So you can see that the Lannisters very easily is the account that we spent the most on. We could also drill down and see that we spent a big amount on ships, a fair amount on hotels, a fair amount on horse rentals, and the same for all of the other Salesforce accounts here. We could also look at opportunities. So the revenue again that we brought in from those opportunities and the expense that we incurred. The most useful thing though, to get a more complete picture of how our whole organization is operating is to bring in the time and effectively the monetary value of that time so that we know our total cost for the opportunities and for the accounts. So here on the left, you'll see we have Concur, we have Salesforce and the Postgres data, reports from Concur, opportunities and accounts from Salesforce, and then opportunity time linked to the Salesforce opportunities from Postgres, and account time linked to accounts. So then we could get a pretty detailed look at all of the opportunities that we had in the last year. We can see the external costs coming from Concur, the internal cost for that opportunity. So that's the time we spent multiplied by 30 for 30 gold coins an hour, being the going rate in Game of Thrones these days. Westeros, there we go. And so then we can see the profit. So we had negative profit, of course, on all of the opportunities that were lost, but you can see that all the other opportunities were quite profitable. We could also look at the profit by Salesforce account. So we can see how many opportunities we had last year, negative profit on some of the accounts, very positive profit on other accounts. And this account profit looks like a very simple measure, but it's actually fairly complex because it's pulling from Salesforce for the revenue that we got from the different opportunities for the accounts. It's pulling from Concur for the expenses that we use for the external expenses, and it's pulling from Postgres to get that time data to find out how much time we spent doing things for those accounts. So using our drivers gives you real simple access to all these data sources in different locations, and then combine that with a BI tool like Tableau, and you've got very excellent reporting capabilities. And so this is just talking quickly about the reports that we were looking at. Simba has a very large amount of data sources that we can connect you to. Here is a good sampling. Again, please visit our website at simba.com and you can see all the different drivers we have available. We're constantly adding more drivers to that list. So if you were looking at accounting, you could look at our QuickBooks driver or our Xero driver. For marketing, we have Marketo and HubSpot, for example. So pretty much any data source that you're looking to connect to, we can help you connect there. Any questions?
Okay, Jeff, looks like there's a number of questions. What we'll do is we'll try to get to as many of them as we can, and those that we don't get to, we promise that we'll be responding via email and get those answers back to you. So one of the questions is, how do you put SQL on top of Concur data?
So in the Simba technology stack, we have a SQL engine. This gives us full SQL 92 processing capabilities, so joins, aggregations, filters, all of these kinds of things. So that means that as long as we can map something to a table, we can use our SQL engine to put SQL processing on top of that. So we use the Concur REST API to get data from different endpoints in Concur. We can also pass down things to Concur itself for best performance. So filters, for example, we can pass those down to a data source like Concur so that we're only getting the results that make sense for the driver to use.
Okay. One other question I have is, why use our Salesforce driver? Because Tableau offers a Salesforce driver.
Yeah, so in many instances in a tool like Tableau, they actually use Simba connectivity for some things. Spark and SQL Server are good examples. For Salesforce in particular, they do have their own connector. We've had customers who haven't gotten the best performance using the built-in connector, and they come to us because we can better pass down things to the Salesforce server side. A particular instance, they had millions of case records, and we were able to more effectively filter out those case records on the server side, letting them actually use the data in Tableau.
Okay, and it looks like a great segue. There's another question here. Is there a limitation as to the size of data or the number of rows of data that the drivers can pull?
So no, our drivers don't have any limitations regarding the number of rows. The more rows that are being pulled, the longer it takes, of course. Also, some data sources have API limits, so that's something that you could encounter depending on the data source.
Okay. I think I could feel this question. There's a question here, what do our drivers cost? Well, our drivers there's a number of ways that we license the drivers, and it's based upon use case. But we'd ask you to fill out our contact form, and one of our reps will reach out to you and provide you the necessary information you need for your specific use case in licensing the drivers. And last question that we can cover with the time allotted, we've got a question here. Is there drivers for Mac and Tableau?
So all of the ODBC drivers as well as JDBC drivers that we make will work on the Mac. There is a limitation in Tableau for generic ODBC drivers in general. They don't have that generic ODBC connection capability. So generally speaking, most ODBC drivers don't work with Tableau on the Mac.
So as we're coming up to the 18 minutes, we promised that we will get back to everyone with their questions. But that being said, I've got one last slide here that Jeff would like to share. And Jeff, I'll hand it back to you.
Yeah, I just wanted to briefly mention our parent company, Magnitude Software. Simba connectivity is one portion of what Magnitude's overall offering is. We also have a great master data management capabilities, as well as corporate performance management, and more. So please check out our website at magnitude.com.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Jeff. Thank you, everyone who's attended. And we look forward to your questions. And as promised, we will be reaching out to you as well and getting the answers back to your questions. Thank you again.